Hello, this is Decoherent, and welcome back to the increasingly nauseating world of Torment Tides of Numenera. So, last time we poked around a whole bunch. We opened Assist and let something nasty out. Let's see, I don't know, talked to various people. Discovered a nifty pair of traders here who are each other, separated by a time loop, so that's kind of cool. I continue to remain totally unimpressed that we are hanging around inside of a thing that can just cheerfully grow teeth the size of a 3-car garage and eat you. But, here we are. Now, I'd said something about how I'm sitting on a bunch of ciphers and not using them. So I did spend a few minutes and kind of rearranged them. I wanted to put most of the direct damage ciphers on Rin. So she's got Third Man. She's got this Slipknot one that I don't know, that doesn't seem useful, but whatever. But then she's got the Pulsar and the Hypercoolant Spray. Actually, I wonder if I should give her one of the AoEs instead. Let's see here. Heals Intellect. 28 energy damage. Yeah, that's awesome. And 15 to all characters in range. You know what? Let's do that. Let's swap her around with... I don't know what the point is of that Slipknot. I guess I'll hold on to it for the moment, but whatever. I don't really have anything useful to give to these guys. Oh, that's not even a passive effect. That's an active effect. Whatever. Maybe I'll use them. The other thing is, I am hoarding oddities. Originally, I was super impressed that the game actually labels vendor trash for you. Like, I don't know, like this nifty shadow flower or whatever. So that way I know that I can go ahead and safely sell something. And then I happened to read something that someone casually mentioned, oh yeah, sometimes you can give the oddities to specific people and like they say interesting things or whatever. And so now I'm hoarding them again. And I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take a deep breath. And if it turns out that I could have gotten a funny reaction later, then that can wait for the next playthrough. So, let's go ahead and let's get rid of some of this crap. Let's see, that's an artifact, clothing. I probably can't sell that, that's bound to me. So is that. I say this and then I have all this stuff that like, can't sell. Okay, a shadow flower. I'm not sure if I'm going to use that, but here we are. Okay, well maybe I don't have any oddities on me. I thought I did. Yeah, enigmatic sphere. I have all these bonded items that I haven't decided if I'm going to use for any reason. Oddity, check. Should probably go through these two. Okay, well, whatever. Alright. And I hadn't decided if I was going to use this. I don't think so. I don't really have anyone using light melee, so we'll just leave that one. The cipher is kind of neat. The armor is kind of neat. I just wish I could see what this looked like, but I don't think I want to buy it. This is kind of neat. That would be good for our friend Tiber, except that that would eat into his pool. So, I guess we're not going to bother. Let's see here. Well, I don't think we have any artifacts that I care about yet, so... Okay, anyway. So, our ongoing plan here... Need to find a mall that leads to the trading post. Yes, yes. I want to find a way to turn this handle back on. If I examine it. I already examined it. Let's examine it again. That's right, that's a quest item. Right, this device is inert because it lacks power, so I can't use it, can I? Oh, okay. So this device resembles the hilt of a weapon. It rests easily in your hand, but there's no blade. Let's take a look at it carefully. This device is made of azure steel. It appears to be inert and has no obvious function. A stylized name is inscribed into the steel, IOXU. Behind a strong glass plate, you find a compartment that contains an old, depleted power core. It's blackened and drained, so you toss it aside. You could place another power source inside the compartment, but it may require a particular type of energy. Based on your understanding of the technology, it seems as though the device would require a transdimensional power source, something that harnesses the energy of singularities or parallel universes. Okay. That's neat. But I don't know what that would be. If that turns out to be one of the damn oddities I just sold, I'm going to be so mad. Well, I can always buy them back. No, these were like liquid deaths and the spheres and a flower and... Okay. Okay, so keep my eye open for a transdimensional power source. I wonder if our trader friend back in the first zone had one. Well, okay. Oh, here's a new person. Walks without fear. Who are you? You're translucent. That's cool. At first, you're not sure if your eyes are playing tricks on you. A semi-transparent man shuffles and struts before you, his body fading into and out of incorporality. His once fine clothes have rotted away, and his long beard looks to be host to any number of small vermin. Ew! And his eye sockets are disturbingly empty? Yet, as you draw near, somehow he hones in directly on your face, and you have the unnerving feeling that he can see more than what's on the surface. The staring sockets are deep and cavernous, as if they contain depths and space beyond the confines of a skull. He says nothing to you. That's gross. Eye sockets are not very deep. Who are you? His sockets stare into you for a moment while he considers. At last he shakes his head and says, I do not know. I have language, and I have the memory of muscles, but I do not remember how I came by these truths. What I remember is waking in the depths of the bloom. I remember walking. I remember years of darkness before I emerged into the upper reaches at last. What happened to you? The bloom took my old life from me. I awoke in its beating heart and gestated there while it digested my memories. I remember being terrified, but I do not remember what terrified means. He shakes his head to clear it. I had a name, I had a body, I had emotion and a life outside of this form, but I do not remember any of those things now. I do not remember fear. I am reborn in a new life. I am free. So you said you came from the depths of the bloom? What did you see down there? If I speak of them, the memories disappear from me forever. Yet thoughts themselves are ephemera, like our lives. Gone, and only those we chose to share have any hope of continuation. But even that memory is vanity. In a generation, who will remember those words? His socketless eyes look away, and then back again. He smiles gently. Let me tell you what I saw. The bloom reaches through dimensions and across realities. What did I see? I saw a vast beating heart. I traveled through the skeins of the bloom's arteries and its viscera. I stood in open maws and looked across alien landscapes where lost sailors mourn for home, where crystal fields glitter under distant stars. I walked through the slave block where the great Chila staged her revolution. What would you know? We're looking for the crystal fields, so I'd like to hear more about those. A great plateau whose towers bedazzle the eye. Lightning flickers amongst the towers, and strange silicate beings tunnel beneath the glassy surface. There have I watched children of stars and information speak to each other through dancing colors. So what of its heart? A great chamber, the place where the bloom spawns and devours its voices, where its whispers gather in conclave, where its intelligence is strongest and sharpest. I awoke there, and I knew it for my master. So how about its viscera? The gullet, that is its name amongst the bloom guides. A place of veins and flesh where the memories of the bloom's chosen, where they are digested. Echoes wander the place, echoes of the eaten. He holds a hand to his head as if pained. So who were these sailors? Lascars, they call themselves, holding fast to their history because they fear they have been forgotten. Old luxury and gilt banisters are their prison bars. So what was the slave block? Chila was born there, not physically, but her legend. The first Memavira. He forces out this last word with an effort and a spray of intangible spittle, a wince on his face. She spoke to the bloom, and it answered her. The monument to her strength is a murden nest now. Okay, I was thinking about that the Memavira is either well plugged into the bloom, or is the bloom, or an avatar of the bloom, or something gross like that. It's gonna be gross. Okay, heart viscera, sailors. So, have you been to any of these places? No. I stand at the tip of the tendril and watch the landscape pass by as the great devourer prepares to launch itself to another world. Why would I ever step outside my host? I am without danger here. Every day another piece of myself slips away. The great devourer. Yeesh. So what are you doing here? I walk through this upper part of me and let it guide my steps. The weapons of humans mean nothing to this shape, and the paths of the bloom open for me. I am a part of the bloom. It is a part of me. I have been to places others have never seen, and I have seen worlds that lie waiting beyond the maws. Huh. Wonder if I might be able to talk him into helping me open a maw.
Fair enough.
What's going on over here? An enormous statue of a woman wielding a hammer stands here, its lower half lost to the shadows that are in the depths of the bloom. If you say so. Let's see it. Okay, what's this? Oh, there we go. That's the Shrine of Chila. Okay. And what do we have going on further down here?
Here I come.
This tentacled maw appears to be dead. Its flesh is being reabsorbed into the bloom. Yeah, that's great.
I'm ready.
Okay, here's some people to chat with. Just making sure I've seen the whole place. Lascar, we were just talking about you. Hold your tongue good when we speak.
Eris? I'm sorry I called you tiny before.
Well, I'm sorry you're sorry. Are you sad? We should shake that out of you. Oh, there you go. All cured.
You guys are awesome. These three humanoids wear intricately carved armor that makes them look like undersea dwellers of legend. You cannot recall having seen the material from which they are shaped either. Although the suits are bulky, their wearers move with a strange and fluid grace. You might have mistaken them for monsters, but their leader is unhelmed and appears human. Interesting. She has close-cropped hair, an angular face, and her jaws clenched, as if she were subconsciously chewing on a problem. At your approach, she gives you an irritated glance. You address the German Urareki. Speak what you need, or be gone. Jem'Hadar, something like that. Then she reconsiders her words. Ordinarily, hospitality is ours. Forgive this one. The maw to our anchorage is closed. She indicates the hideous tentacled mouth that lies dead in the center of the platform. Another way we must find. Have you word of open maws that lead to our station? She lowers her voice. Beseech you, even. Trapped here without the supplies purchased for our companions. Oh, with the supplies, okay. Well, I can give you a hand, but I'd like some answers to some questions first. Her jaw unclenches by the smallest fraction. Naturally, this one will seek to provide informative truth. Are you guys hive mind, or what's your deal? So what is your anchorage exactly? All the refuge we have ever known. We await the ship that will end our mission and take us home. Captain Jadar commands us. If you find the maw and speak to her, perhaps she can tell you more. So how did you become to trap here? Left the anchorage where our ancestors have served for centuries. Sought resupply, as we have so many times before. Upon return, this way was closed. Again, she indicates the dead maw at her feet. Worried now that comrades may suffer without us. So, do you have any suggestions on where to find maws? This one hoped you would know. We are strangers here. Buying supplies is all we know, not hunting maws. She looks down at the dead maw on the platform. Here was the maw that led to our anchorage. Here it had been for many years. Yet, on our return, dead. Okay, I'll keep my eyes open. Easy enough. This sign reads, "This way to Little Neelesh," in a difficult-to-understand scrawl. Okay. Marooned on an alien shore. Called an anchorage. Okay. Seems legit.
If you're sure it's safe.
So we have reasons to actually duck into a couple of these various slums. I am curious. Oh, that's her head. Okay, I get it. Ew. Neat. Okay. These sturdy jugs contain a slimy, viscous fluid. A tendril of bloom flesh squirms around in one of them. Of course it's slimy and viscous. Oh, this place. Words dance across the face of the scroll, in a script so tiny you can't quite make it out. Only the title is legible. The Chronicles of Chila the Great, Volume 6. Camped writing loops around this scroll in strange patterns and shapes. The only text you can read is the title, The Chronicles of Chila the Great, Volume 2. Alright.
Sure enough.
Let's see here. Rumpled blankets and rags lie on the floor, exuding a sour, sweaty odor. This is probably where some of the cultists sleep. Have I mentioned, by the way, that, like, there are cults for everything in this place? This polished skull is chipped and pierced in many places. Oddly, it has no teeth, suggesting that it swallowed its prey whole. Huh. This shelf holds a number of odd offerings: a skull, a sealed jar, some candles, a metal cup, and the shriveled remains of a small hairless creature. Of course it does. Because why not? If I want to poke at this... Of course I do. A slab of pitted stone sits at the center of the shrine, heaped with a motley display of offerings. Judging by the accumulated dust and filth, it's been here for decades or longer. Let's examine these ideally without touching them, please. The objects on the slab are a bizarre mixture of trophies left by visitors to the shrine. Many of the offerings appear to be food of the most ghastly nature: candied eyeballs, amputated fingers, claws and little cakes and pies, and puddings made from other unidentifiable organs, probably all harvested from vanquished foes. You also see broken weapons, severed limbs, and a scattering of silver items: little pots, cutlery, buttons, and other discarded scraps of the metal. People have obviously been leaving these offerings here for some time, and everything is a jumbled mess. Your sharp eyes catch sight of tiny bloom tendrils that snake along the surface of the slab, attaching themselves to the offerings. They writhe and undulate as if feeding upon them, yet the offerings bear no physical signs they've been touched. Okay, this is going to go well. The Observant Speck. In the shadowy corner of the shrine lies an old woman, so tiny and unremarkable that she blends into the gloom. She's been watching you since you arrived, following you with bright, intense eyes. You notice that one of her arms is missing at the elbow. Hello! The whispers told me you were coming, cast off. They often do, when someone they regard as interesting finds their way to the bloom. Her voice is soft and shifting, as if everything she says is echoed by the chittering voices of the bloom. I hate this place. Suddenly, she is at your side, one small hand touching her arm. Her eyes probe yours. Did you come here with a purpose? Do you know what this place is? Then you realize that the shrine does familiar, as if you, or maybe the changing god, have been here before. Yes, an nemesis. That's awesome. The lowest I can roll is 100. You scan the room, searching for anything that might seem familiar. A metallic gleam catches your eye from the nearby slab of stone. It lies partially buried beneath a moldy pile of offerings, but the unusual shape of the metal sparks a memory. The old woman follows your gaze. He left that as an offering, your sire did, when he was here. You can almost feel the weight of the device in your hands. With a sudden, jarring clarity, you see the chamber as it was 40 years ago, when the changing god stood before a group of robed bloom cultists, offering the device in trade for information. And in the corner, an elderly woman, bird-like, with shiny eyes. The woman you've just met, or someone much like her, was at the shrine then, too. He pored over every scroll, she whispered, half to herself, wanting to learn how Chila forged a friendship with the bloom, a bond that imposed no price upon her, or so he thought. And now, here you are, in the shrine of Chila the Great, Chila Silverskin, Chila the Bride of the Hammer, and I am her observant speck. So when he was here, what did he want from the bloom? You said something about a friendship? To create a portal to another world, a place called the Ascension. Yes! He believed that the crystals of that world would save him from death. So he descended to the bloom's heart and forged a bond of sorts. From that bond, a new maw was born. It took your sire to the world he sought. She purses her lips. But for every bond, the bloom always extracts a price. If it could not feast upon your sire then, it will find a way to devour one of his offspring. More than one, perhaps. So, did he not make the crystals? Are these from the Ascension? Did he find them and modify them? What kind of bond? And it sounds like there's other cast-offs here, or possibly a bunch of them. Oh, plus the ones that just came with us from Mila Vest. Oh no. That's not good. Alright. That's both cool and uncool. So what can you tell me about Chila? Stories, she murmurs, passed from one speck to the next. So many stories told by so many tongues. Too many to hold in my head, but the bloom remembers, and it whispers in my ears to remind me. So where did she come from? The speck closes her eyes and cocks her head like a bird's, as if listening to the voices of the bloom. As she begins to speak, the soft chitters and whispers that always underlie her words grow stronger, twisting them around in your head and spawning images in your mind's eye. Look up, high on the cliffs, a sturdy little house. The cliffs of Sagas Cliffs flash below your eyes, crowned with old ramshackle homes. They cling to the rocks like spindly crabs high above the sea. One of them catches your eye, a pretty little house, freshly painted blue and green in a solid nook of stone. A man and a woman dwell inside, a father and a mother. 2 children they have, a girl and a boy. Now you can see the people, too. The girl is tall for her age, robust and strong. Her brother is small and cautious and quick. One day, the father pulls a treasure from the sea. You can see the man in a fishing boat, hauling a silvery cylinder out of his net, looking at it in wonder. He brings it home to his family. What shall I do with this artifact, he wonders, for I am a simple man, not a wizard or a sage. That's good to know that, by the way. The man glances out the window of his home and sees his 2 children playing in the street. Artifacts bring trouble, he says to himself, and I have a family to protect. I'll bring this treasure to the boss of the town, and she will thank me for it. So, the next day, the man gathers the treasure in a sack and sets out for the manor at the top of the cliffs. His daughter Chila wants to go with him, but he shakes his head and goes alone. Many weeks pass. The man never returns from the manor on the hill. Chila asks everyone she knows, but no one has seen her father. One day, just as she and her brother leave the house in the morning, they hear a crash behind them. In your mind's eye, you can see the pretty little house pulling away from the cliff, its wooden supports snapping like twigs, bursting apart as it falls towards the sea. It suddenly strikes you as strange that the house, seemingly so kept better than its neighbors, should collapse so suddenly. The children race back along the road, only to find that their house is gone and their mother lies dead amongst the rocks. As her brother curls up in the street and weeps, Chila stands behind him, gazing towards the manor at the top of the hill. I know you did this, she whispers. I know what you did to my father. The treasure you took from him is my birthright, and I will have it back. So was it vengeance that drove her then, or maybe a sense of justice? Ah, not vengeance, a desire to be extraordinary. The Speck's voice is quiet again, the whispers receded, and you sense that these words are truly her own. Chila believed that her parents were easy victims because no one knew who they were. If they had been prominent and well-known, the boss of Sagas wouldn't have dared to harm them, but they were small and simple folk, so no one cared when they died. Deeds of renown without peer, if I can quote another good author. So, please tell me how Chila found her way to the bloom. Once again, the Speck cocks her head and closes her eyes. Look up. 2 orphans climb the cliffs towards the manor high above. In your mind's eye, you see a brother and a sister in their late teens as they scale the sheer cliffs of Sagas. Above them, carved from the natural rock, looms a great walled house. It belongs to a woman, the boss of Sagas and mistress of the bloom, she who killed their parents and took their birthright for herself. That's interesting. The girl is Chila, tall, broad-shouldered, and flamboyantly dressed, like a glittering gem against the dull stone of the cliffs. The boy is her brother, Shade, slender and quick, cowled in black. Through the unguarded window they climb, slipping into the garden beyond. There, at its heart, is the artifact, their birthright. In your mind's eye, Chila and Shade crouch on a ledge. You see the artifact as they must have, a metallic cylinder fitted into a strange device. She leans forward, so eager to see what is rightfully hers. But the ground turns slick, and she falls, toppling into the garden, close enough to the artifact that she can almost reach. But she's snared in a net of rainbow light. You can see Chila crumpled under the strange net, trapped, calling for her brother. Shade watches from the shadows. He makes no move to help. I wonder if this is something similar to the net of rainbow light that our friend Allegern used before we smashed into things. Well, things. Into our place. I can't come up with the right word. You know what I mean. Betrayed, hisses the Speck. Led into a trap by her twin. But if she couldn't have the artifact, at least she could touch. The Speck's voice strains, and as it does so, you can feel Chila straining, reaching a hand through the net. As her finger brushes the artifact, it flares with a brilliant light, and it's gone. Is she actually betrayed, or is he just not stupid enough to jump down there? But not gone, not really. It's part of Chila now, changing her slowly from within. She can sense the change, but she doesn't know what it means, not yet. Not as they lead her away. You catch a glimpse of Chila being led in chains from the great house. She's cast into the bloom as a slave, and there, the Speck smiles, softly and warm, she meets me. But that wasn't really you, was it? No, not me, not me. She shakes her head slowly, as if she isn't certain of her own words. It was another woman called the Speck, my namesake, the insignificant Speck. That's who she was back then. Interesting. So what is it that she did to warrant such a respect in shrines and everything? And her own religion, which apparently everyone has. In the dark, in the bleeding guts of the bloom, a score of young women crouch in a cell carved from the living flesh of the bloom. You can barely see the girls in your mind's eye, thin and tired, huddled against the fleshy walls, bound in chains. Who they were before doesn't matter. They're slaves now, doomed to labor in the dark. So, there must be several categories of slaves, I wonder. You know, the ones that are essentially bait for the maws and traditional slaves. Or maybe there aren't any anymore because of what's about to happen. One day, someone new is brought to their cell and chained beside a small girl who calls herself the Speck. The old woman smiles. The new slave says her name is Chila. Even in chains, she meets the guard's eyes, and they look away. Already the bloom whispers in her ears. Chila places her hands upon its flesh and strikes a bargain. What is that artifact doing? Changing her slowly from within. You owe us, Chila says to the bloom. For the slaves you've eaten, for the Speck's arm that you devoured, you owe us something in return. The flesh trembles beneath her hand and opens. Beyond is a chamber full of weapons. You catch a glimpse of Chila passing blades and stranger ornaments to the other girls in her cell. So, she has part of an arm missing too, so the original Speck did? That's interesting too. Chila picks a glowing hammer for herself, or maybe the bloom does. It fits her hand like it was made for her, and it never leaves her side again. Then we gather together and make our plans to escape. When all of us are ready, Chila starts hammering on the door to our cell. The guards come running, and we fall upon them, cutting them down, tearing them apart. Then Chila leads us from our prison, and we pour into the market, gathering more and more slaves to her banner. We kill every master we can find. In the market, we decide to make our stand. Chila knows that her enemy, the boss of Sagus, the woman who killed her parents and turned her brother against her, can't ignore us. We form into ragged lines. Then we hear them, the roar of the soldiers, the tread of heavy boots getting closer. Somehow you can hear them too, along with the terrified murmurs of slaves as they grip their weapons and prepare to fight for their lives. Noise, confusion. The Speck's eyes are still closed, but she staggers back, raising a hand to defend herself against an invisible attack, as if she thinks she's in the midst of a battle. You can faintly hear the screams and cries, and the clank of steel on steel. I stay by Chila's side when the battle is joined. I try to guard her back, but she's struck, first by an arrow, then by a blade. Whenever they cut her flesh, silver scales grew over the wound, and she keeps on fighting. Chila knows why. When she touched the artifact, her birthright, it became a part of her, changed her, so that she cannot be killed. She smiles, raises her hammer, and crushes the skull of every soldier who stands against her. A shadow passes overhead. It's her traitorous brother, Shade, soaring on wings of flesh and steel, coming to kill her at last. This reminds me of Dune. Wonder if she's a member of House Atreides. He strikes her once, twice, and again. The Speck's voice goes quiet. Each time, silver scales grow to cover the wounds. Instead of getting weaker, Chila grows stronger. She grabs him by the foot and smashes him to the ground. But instead of killing him, she speaks to him. It's a whisper, and I can't hear what she says, but Shade begins to weep. When she lets him go, he stays on the ground. The battle is won, and the enemy soldiers are running. Chila goes to face the woman who killed her parents. I leave you with your life, she tells her, but not your name. Get out of here and never come back. You can almost see the broken woman, a feared warlord only hours before, fleeing alone and in shame from the battle. The Speck pauses and opens her eyes. That's where the story ends. Our enemy fled, and the bloom was ours. Sagas Cliffs was ours. Chila became the first Memavira. We ended the trade in slaves, and Chila ruled Sagas and all the lands around for half a century, until the bloom called her to its heart. So, the bloom called Chila to its heart? What does that mean? Its whispers called her, and she disappeared into the depths. Maybe it took her to another world, or maybe she still lives down there. One day she'll return for her Speck. I'm sure of that. So what happened to the boss of Sagas? She was forgotten. Some of the slaves said that they followed her, thinking to kill her despite Chila's promise of safe passage. But before they had a chance, she vanished. She escaped to another world, or was eaten by the bloom. A mischievous smile plays at the old woman's lips. I prefer to think the latter. So you keep saying we as if you were there. She blinks. I see the memories as if I were there, as if I was her, the first speck. But I couldn't have been there. It was too long ago. So the bloom is passing forward sequential consciousness. Very interesting. So Chila ended this trade in slaves, but it's returned. In a different form, yes. The old slave-holding families bided their time for generations, marrying themselves into the new leading families of freed slaves. They found ways to justify slavery as a punishment for the wicked. So it is with the wealthy and powerful. They're more like bloom flesh than they'd care to admit. Stubborn, enduring, and difficult to kill. Huh. So is this a place of worship? Not really. People come here to be close to the bloom because its mind is strong here. They leave offerings. She waves her stump at the nearby slab. Valuables they've stolen, trophies of their kills, proof that they're hunters, not prey. So are you in charge here? She laughs aloud. Me? Making speeches? Punishing the sinful? No, I'm only a speck. They let me stay here, and I tell them stories, that's all. Huh, sure sounded like you were giving speeches here. So, what kind of people leave offerings here? Bloom cultists most of all, but also guides, scavengers, merchants who fear to lose their precious cargo, and travelers from other worlds. And the Memavira before she lost the favor of the bloom. Oh, interesting. She'd heap the offering stone with the heads and hands of those she killed. So haughty she was back then, so sure that the bloom loved her and things would never change. Nothing is forever in the bloom. Before she lost the favor of the bloom. That's interesting. So, you've mentioned these bloom cultists several times. What is it that they believe in? That the bloom is a god. Not a very kind or benevolent one, of course, she smiles. Some people seek an illusion of safety by redefining the thing that they fear. So, does the bloom respond better to thieves and murderers? She shrugs. Sometimes it pays more attention to them. Whether you want the attention of the bloom is another matter altogether. I agree completely. Sure. So I'd like to know a little more about you. Her small hand enfolds the stump of her empty arm, a self-conscious gesture. I'm only a speck, a mote of dust, easily missed. Nothing important, save for the words I speak, the stories I tell to those who would hear them. But I observe much that passes in the bloom, and I hear still more in its whispers. So the whispers that you hear are the voices of the bloom? So they are, her eyes glitter. A lot of people hear them, but none as clearly as me. So I assume it's the bloom that ate your arm? I didn't lose it, she did. The first speck, the insignificant one. Alright, how did she lose her arm? Eaten by the bloom. It was taken in her sleep, cauterized at the elbow, just like... She stopped herself, appearing confused. You were sure she was about to say mine. Just like the stories say. That's interesting. So the bloom picks them. Interesting. I don't want to sleep here. Are you crazy? Okay, so this is strange and interesting. Let's go ahead and take a break here before we go talk to our other person up on top and see what kind of crazy stuff they have going on here. Yeah, I could sleep on rumpled blankets and rags. Yeah. So, anyway, hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I will see you next time.